Hi, welcome to the Conversation of Mass, where we converse about Mass. Our first topic of today is the good old mole.
So you mean melanocytic nevus? The good old brown spots on your skin, and one always seems to be on the middle of your wrist? I actually have one on both of my wrists. Have you noticed that, Caleb?
I have not. I do not generally look at other people's
Caleb,
wrists.
check your wrist right now and see if you have a mole on the middle of your wrist.
I do not have a mole in the middle of my wrist.
That's pretty disappointing, because it's actually pretty common. But
Sus.
anyways, is that what you meant? Like the non-cancerous disorder of pigment producing skin cells, commonly called birthmarks?
Well, that is one type of mole. There are many different moles, ranging from the aforementioned melanocytic nevus to the golden mole, a small insectivorous burrowing mammals endemic to southern Africa.
Interesting. What about the Condylura cristata, the common star-nosed mole?
That is indeed another type of mole, a very common one, I believe.
Yeah, there's a lot of different moles. But, I mean...
Moles range everywhere, like mole sauce, a traditional sauce originally used in Mexican cuisine.
I'm pretty sure that's mole sauce.
It probably is, but it's
Good old
spelled like,
mole sauce.
but it's
Gotta love
spelled
it
like mole.
when you put that mole sauce on your burrito.
I'm calling it mole sauce from now on.
Good to know, Caleb.
It's part of its culture now.
Yep. But, I mean, the actual topic of today, the mole, a unit of, like, quantity, equaling 6.02 times 10 to the 23rd. Like, you could have a mole of anything. You could have a mole of trucks. You could have a mole of hands slapping trucks. You could have a mole of reel-to-reel CDs. It doesn't matter. You can have a mole of anything.
Do you know?
You could even have a mole of moles. You could have a mole of melanocytic nevus. You could have a mole of birthmarks on your skin.
Well, that's a lot of birthmarks there.
That would be a lot of birthmarks. Okay, I have a question, Caleb. You know how birthmarks are, like, raised off of your skin a little bit?
Yeah.
Theoretically, if you had an infinite number of moles, like, available to be produced on your body, could you stack enough moles on top of each other to the point that you just have, like, a limb that is a mole? Like, you just have a mole limb flopping around everywhere?
I mean, because it depends on how you could, quote-unquote, grow your moles. Like,
it could be by luck.
Could you keep just, like, producing them in that one exact spot? Or, like, are you able to, like, sever them off and then reattach them?
I dislike that. So I would assume
I dislike your mole
against the latter.
Oh.
But anyways, back to the chemistry use of mole. I mean, a lot of things are measured in moles. Mainly being elements, like the amount of atoms you have. So you could have a mole of atoms of, for example, lithium. And then we can measure the mass of that. Since atoms have such a low mass, it's much more efficient to measure it in moles of atoms and then find that mass than to have a mass that's like a fraction by like a 10,000th.
Yeah, when we're measuring, we generally measure particles with it, and then with that amount of particles, you convert that into moles on your way through what we like to call Mole Road.
Mole Road, that good old road that truck drives down that gets slapped.
Yep, and you deviate, that truck deviates from that road, trying to go straight from particles to grams without passing through Mole Island.
You always need to pass through Mole Island or you get eaten by the sharks and bleed out in the water.
I thought it was piranhas.
Either way,
I think a
they're
shark
both
is
fish.
fish.
It's probably both.
I'm sorry, but is a shark a fish?
I hate that question. Is a shark a fish?
Is a
I mean,
Sharks
it
are a group of
acts.
elasmobranch fish characterized by a cartilaginous skeleton, 5 to 7 gill slits on the side of the head, and pectoral fins that are not fused to the head. So I guess they are a type of fish.
I mean, they're a very large fish, a very thick fish.
They are indeed.
You know what else is thick, Caleb?
What?
Oganesson.
Oganesson, the one element that is the largest, the one element that
Has the greatest molar mass of any element.
also
Oganesson is dummy thick. I would slap that.
I mean, then again, you slapped a truck, so
I did slap a truck. I mean, like, atomic mass of 294. 294. That's pretty close to 273, which is the number used to convert Celsius to Kelvin. That's pretty interesting.
that is.
Wouldn't you agree? I mean,
One thing that I would say is interesting as well is Oganesson is the one element that we could not find a consistent pronunciation.
I know. It took us so long to figure out how to pronounce Oganesson. Oganesson.
Oganesson. Oganesson.
Oganesson. It's a stupid name. I mean, did you know that it used to have a different name, or it has a different, like, name? Like, back in 7th grade when we were looking at the original, like, periodic table from that class, it's like Unoctium or Unonoctium, some really weird name.
Yeah.
And like the bottom 5 in that bottom right corner all had like the prefix UN.
I thought it was UU.
I don't know, but it's really weird. It says it's a temporary name taken from Latin meaning 118.
Huh.
Interesting.
I mean,
wait.
element 118.
Yeah, it is element 118. So it must have been a temporary like thing before it was named officially by its founder, creator, or discoverer.
Named after Yuri Oganessian. Or Oganessian.
That's a pretty sick name. I would take his last name if I was married to him.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't be, but I'd take it.
Okay, speaking of taking things, I don't know where I was going with that.
No.
But anyways, to now move on to our next subject, the periodic table. Gil, can you give us a little bit of information about the periodic table?
You know, the periodic table is many things. It's filled with many elements, ranging with different letters from H to ZR to OG for Oganesson.
Oganesson.
And these elements, consisting of many different names and many different letters, all contain many different masses, ranging from hydrogen with 1.01 to the aforementioned Oganesson with 294.
Oganesson. Caleb,
Oganesson.
did you know that the letter J is the only letter not found on the periodic table?
It isn't. What?
Yeah, if you look through that entire thing, you will not find a single letter J.
I'm looking for a J, Ryder. I don't see a J.
You know what another coincidence is? J is the 10th letter of the alphabet.
J is.
And you know what the 10th element on the periodic table is? Neon. And did you know that the only neon sign museum is in Warsaw, Poland?
Huh.
And did you know that Poland was involved in World War II?
I'm sure I learned that at some
Did you
point.
also know, Caleb, that Adolf Hitler was involved in World War II?
I did.
Therefore, the periodic table is Hitler.
I do not agree with
By
that
the
logic.
transitive property
By the transitive property of
and the slippery
completely
slope
irrelevant-
fallacy.
and the completely irrelevant facts.
Okay, back to the periodic table.
Yeah.
The
The one
periodic
that
table
has nothing to do with Hitler.
is split into 18 columns and 7 rows and has many different sections.
See, but what you're forgetting is the fact that instead of 18 rows, it is actually 32 rows, because you are missing out on the F block, which is an extra 14 rows.
But isn't the F block technically included within the periodic table in the spot of 2 squares?
It is not. It is simply written like that to shorten the length of it. Otherwise, it would be like twice as long and would be sucky to fit on papers.
Okay, on a different note, I heard you say the word shorten. So this is kind of a controversial question. But would it be possible to shorten time? Like, what is the unit of time?
I mean,
And can you change time?
that's an interesting question, because I mean, time is what we use to measure everything, ranging from the smallest unit of time being the Planck time to like
Infinite.
eons.
I mean, technically, we're recording this podcast in a 30-minute unit of time. But what does that mean?
I mean,
Like, does time exist?
the question is it really 30 minutes? Or is it
Is it
half an hour? Is it
And
like
theoretically,
300 seconds?
what if you just stopped time? Nobody would notice. Nobody would notice if you stopped time, because you're only conscious when time is moving forward.
That is, if not a single person or thing lived during that time, or during that lack of time.
Yeah, the lack of time. See, nothing happens in the lack of time. You can't have a lack of time, because time needs to be flowing for the lack of time to exist.
See, but that's the thing. In order for there to be a lack of time,
You need to have time.
Time needs to be flowing before and after the lack of time, but not during. Because if it's flowing,
So it's just a hole in reality. But we don't know how many holes in reality there have been, or if they exist at all, because you wouldn't know, because time isn't going while time isn't going.
Yeah, because let's say every second that we perceive time to move forward, time is really stopping for a minute. We would never notice. And then you might be thinking like, oh, that must mean I'm like as old as a dinosaur. But
no, because time isn't moving. Therefore, you can't be getting any older.
So granted, to an outside source perceiving our reality on what they perceive as time, to them, we would seem, I'd seem like 750 years old. 60 times 15.
Yeah. As stated in a song title by the band Chicago, does anybody really know what time it is? Does anybody really know what time it is, Caleb?
See,
how do you know what time it is?
But that's the question, because I could be wrong here, but I'm pretty sure we do not know the beginning of the universe to, for example, the millisecond. We know it by a couple million or billion years.
Exactly. Humans have only been alive for like an inexplicably small amount of time.
Yeah, when you want like an hour to pass by, basically no matter what you're doing, unless you're doing something that, I don't know, you're not paying attention to time, an hour seems like a long time. So does a day, a week, a month, a year. But in the grand scheme of things, that's nothing. I mean, like, you know how long it took for, like, the phone to be invented? I don't know why I chose the phone. It was the first thing I could think of.
I mean, phones have only been around for, probably the earliest phones were like dated back 100, 200 years ago. And then the mobile phone only like 20, 30 years.
Yeah, the original phone was invented. I mean, it was Italian innovator Antonio Meucci. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. I'm sorry, Italians. Is credited with inventing the first basic phone in 1849. That's a long time ago.
But is it?
But only to us.
Only to us, because we've only been alive for 14 and 15 years.
Yeah, because you think how long, like, a mountain can last before it withers away. Humans rarely live to 100. And this was invented 150 years ago.
It's crazy to think about. Well, I have another question relating to time. How was, like, the unit of time, like seconds, invented? Like, how did somebody come up with, okay, this length of time from here to here is exactly 1 second? And then how did everybody agree upon that and create, like, watches that were accurate to measure this second? Like, what if the second we know is, like, a quarter of a second off from the second that existed 200,000 years ago?
See, that's the thing, is I read this quite a while ago, but it actually is slightly off. Because I would assume that the unit of time was originally conceptualized after the Earth revolving around the Sun, creating 1 year in 365 approximately and a quarter days, causing us to have an extra day every 4 years. So I'm assuming they took that, and it also had to do with, so that's how they found out how many days that they were.
So early astronomers and mathematicians.
Yes, and they derived how long a day was by the lunar cycle. That's somewhat like the lunar cycle. The lunar cycle is not actually what I'm going for, but...
And how do people know? So if you're saying they based it off of, like, planets in the sky, sun, moon, how do you know when the sun is exactly above you? How do you know when the moon is perfectly centered at a 90-degree angle from the Earth? From where you are? So how do you determine exactly when it was noon? When you can't, like, take a ruler from the Earth to the sun and make sure it's exactly straight up?
Well, one of the earliest inventions to actually tell time was the sundial. It was used a long time ago. I believe... Yeah, the measurement of time began with the invention of sundials in ancient Egypt sometime prior to 1500 BC. So,
okay.
So time has been around a long time before...
But time has been around forever. Time was only discovered. The concept of time.
Because people always knew that time was passing. But
have you ever... Go ahead.
But only until time was measured did we really start to understand it.
Have you ever thought about how crazy it is that humans even exist? Have you ever thought how crazy it is that we are, like, the only animal intelligent enough to, like, communicate through speech, like, constantly? Like, some animals maybe have, like, their own language, but it's nothing more than, like, saying, hey, a threat, hey, I like you, hey, let's go have a child. Mating calls.
Ooga booga booga.
Or humans use cheesy pickup lines instead.
Oh, yeah.
Like, why are we the only species that's this intelligent?
You know, I've always wondered that too, because I've read many articles on other animals being intelligent, but we're the only ones that evolved from Homo sapiens that evolved to have vocal cords and the proper muscle functions to be able to walk on two limbs, use the other two for cognitive function. Our brain is more advanced.
Could you imagine how different the world would be if we didn't have 4 limbs? I know some people obviously have disabilities like that where they don't have all their limbs, but they have used like modern technology, wheelchairs, crutches, prosthetics to be able to act or function normally with 4 limbs. But what if nobody had any limbs, or modified limbs, like if we were all had fins or something, or I don't know, how different would modern society be without functioning hands with 5 fingers able to grip a tool used to build a house?
Yeah, I feel like
Would we survive as a species?
See, that depends all on, I guess, what you would call the fate of evolution. Were we quote-unquote destined to become evolved to this state of self-opinionment and
being able to have a podcast talking about this,
where we're talking about evolving to the point at which we can have a podcast?
Did time decide exactly where we would be at this moment?
Yeah, so if we, for example, didn't have opposable thumbs, which is the main reason why a lot of animals can't do the things that we can, would we still find a way to use our remaining 4 fingers to do stuff that we would normally do in our everyday lives? Or would it completely dismantle our way of life, causing us to be no further evolved than Homo sapiens?
Are we intelligent because of our limbs and thumbs and hands and able to work differently than other animals? Or are we able to work differently than other animals because we're intelligent?
See, I feel like that falls under 2 different categories. I mean, because it could go either way. I mean, it's possible that we evolved to become intelligent because of our advancements in society and technology and breeding, I guess, of the human species. But that could come from the fact that we had the fingers and the limbs to be able to evolve society.
That's such an insane thing to think about. How every single moment in time led up to this exact moment, evolution of animals and our species. How different would things be if one minute detail was changed?
Yeah, because that begs the previous question that I had been asking about, is it fate, or do we choose our own future? Because some people believe it's one or the other. I personally don't have an opinion, and when I do, it changes very often.
As Miss Bush states every Friday, make good choices, for your choices determine your future.
She does indeed. But
so, is that a correct statement? Do our choices determine our future, or does time determine our future?
Or
do others determine our future?
Are we simply destined by whether it's our subconscious selves, some otherworldly being that are playing us like a bunch of puppets? What is the future?
And what's the past? Is the past... Can you go back to the past?
I mean, that all depends on whether we find a way to manipulate the space-time continuum and be able to manipulate it safely.
Oh, man. Okay. So I have another point to bring up. like regarding the multiple universe theory.
Oh, the
So
multiverse. Yes.
there's an infinite number of universes, multiverses. So me saying this word right here, every single word in that sentence, every single word I'm saying right now could be different in another universe and create a completely different timeline. Words I've said days ago or months in the future, that creates a completely different timeline. Every single person saying every single different word could create a new timeline. Me touching my dresser right now could create a different timeline. Me looking up right now could create a different timeline. And every single direction I look creates a different timeline. Every single interaction between every single person and every single thing happening in every single moment creates a different timeline.
Yeah,
And we happen to be in the current one.
that's what I like to think about with the multiverse theorem is how precise does it go? Is it every second? It determines, is there a new choice? Do I need to split? Is it every tenth of a second? Every hundredth?
Is it every
millisecond?
heartbeat? Every neuron in your brain?
Every time something
Every
in the
small
universe happens?
chemical in your body being sent, bouncing off a different, or blood cells bouncing off a different side of your vein?
Or is it even determined by human functions or time? Or is it determined by some third party?
What would that third party be?
Because it's possible, since we're going off an abstract theory of the multiverse, saying that really anything can happen. So what if it's its own set, like, timer? Where it's like, okay, it's this time, let's create a new universe and pick some decision, or every decision that happens in that single moment of time, and make a new universe with different. And how different would that simple action of looking up or down, looking left or right, picking up your paper, picking up your pencil, how could that affect the world?
In so many different ways. But the
Or-
world, we won't ever know, because we only live in one world. We only live in one straight, direct forward timeline. Or does time go in a straight line? Or does time go in a circle? Are we destined to repeat time?
Yeah, that begs the question of, well, your previous statement begs the question of, does little changes like looking up or down even affect the world? Or is it a difference between I'm looking up at my dresser or I'm looking up at this piece of paper? Which reminds me, hey, I use paper for school. What did I do in school today? Oh, I had chemistry homework. Oh, I forgot to answer the last two questions. Let me do that. That causes me to be delayed 5 minutes for whatever I was about to do. What kind of ripple effects could a simple action like looking around have?
I don't know, Killam. I don't know. There's some things that just can't be explained so simply. You can have theories, you can think about it as much as you want, but you're never going to get a clear answer. Because there's no way to know how many different universes there are, or how many different timelines there are, if time exists. There isn't a good way to test that with the technology and resources we have available in the current day.
See, the question is, will we ever have the technology to test that? To be able to
Only time will tell.
Manipulate time.
Or will it?
But the question is, considering the fact that if we ever did learn how to manipulate time, is there a reason why we have no evidence of it today? Because, like, if I were to write down on my calendar, or, like, never forget for the rest of my life, that if I found a way to manipulate time and be able to travel back and travel forward, go to this exact day, appear in my room, and just say, hey, time travel exists. The question is, did we ever, or will we ever figure it out if we we don't see it at any time. So, as we're running out of time here, I feel like that can be one of our last points to talk about. That was a pretty deep
Or are we
subject.
running out of time, Caleb?
That is
How
a
many
good question.
How many times has time stopped during this podcast? Or how many times hasn't time stopped during this podcast?
See, no matter how many times
You'll
it
never know.
did stop, it won't matter, because time only progresses when time
And it's
is
only
moving,
in the past.
and we'll only notice it when our brains are functioning, which only happens when time
When time is moving. Jinx.